provide for its own defense. The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within.
The UK has a free speech problem, and Elon Musk just put it on the global agenda. When the world's richest man calls your democratic policies a betrayal, most leaders would pay attention. But Starmer has chosen to dismiss these concerns entirely. This dismissal has created an opportunity for Trump and JD Vance to align with Musk against Britain's leadership. I'll show you exactly why this matters to everyone who values free expression.
With the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs.
And why the economic consequences for the UK could be immediate and severe. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great! Thank you so much. Now back to the video.
After British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before.
Imagine living in a country where the simple act of praying silently could land you in legal trouble. This isn't some dystopian fiction, it's becoming the disturbing reality in modern Britain. The case of Adam Smith Connor exemplifies this alarming trend. This British Army veteran wasn't protesting or harassing anyone when authorities approached him near an abortion facility. He was simply standing alone, head bowed, in silent prayer. When questioned about what he was praying for, Smith Connor made the fateful mistake of honesty, explaining he was praying on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. That personal, private moment of reflection resulted in a fine. What makes this case particularly chilling is that it's not an aberration, but part of a systematic approach. The UK's controversial buffer zones law establishes 200-meter exclusion zones around abortion facilities, where even silent prayer becomes a criminal offense. This legislation effectively criminalizes not just active protest, but personal expression and religious practices, creating an environment where thoughts themselves can become subject to policing. The tentacles of this law are reaching even further into private life. Scottish authorities have begun distributing warning letters to citizens whose homes fall within these safe access zones, essentially putting them on notice that praying within the privacy of their own residences could violate the law. Consider the implications. In your own living room, your own thoughts could make you a criminal if they take the form of prayer about certain topics. The irony becomes even more pronounced when you consider that Britain, historically championed as a beacon of free speech and liberty, is pursuing these cases while simultaneously facing a severe prison overcrowding crisis. Rather than focusing resources on violent offenders, authorities are actively prosecuting citizens for silent prayer and social media posts. The message is clear: your thoughts are not your own. When Elon Musk discovered these developments, what had been primarily a domestic issue suddenly erupted onto the global stage. The world's richest man didn't mince words, calling the situation a betrayal of democracy and declaring this is not what the UK should stand for. His intervention immediately ignited fierce debate, with supporters praising his defense of fundamental liberties while critics accused him of misunderstanding British law. Musk's criticism ignited a diplomatic firestorm that was about to intensify. When JD Vance took the stage at the Munich Security Conference, what began as one billionaire's Twitter critique transformed into a full-blown international incident. Vance didn't mince words, directly challenging the UK's backslide away from conscience rights and warning that religious Britons were facing a genuine threat to their fundamental freedoms. The fact that a potential US vice president was openly criticizing a key ally's domestic policies at a major international security forum sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. Keir Starmer's response revealed a startling lack of diplomatic finesse. Rather than addressing the substance of these concerns, he dismissed Vance's speech as monstrous and called it deeply insulting for Americans to lecture Britain on its laws. This defensive posture came despite mounting evidence that free speech in the UK was indeed under threat. Starmer's insistence that Britain doesn't need external validation of its legal framework rang hollow when faced with concrete examples of citizens being punished for their thoughts. The situation escalated further when Donald Trump himself weighed in, backing Vance with characteristic brevity. He's right. Free speech is a basic right. With these 9 words, the former president elevated what might have been dismissed as an isolated critique into a position endorsed at the highest levels of American politics. Suddenly, Starmer faced a united front of America's most influential voices. This created an extraordinary diplomatic contradiction. While publicly bristling at American interference, Starmer has been desperately seeking trade talks with Trump despite their previous clashes. The Prime Minister now finds himself in the awkward position of needing economic cooperation from the very people whose concerns about civil liberties he's dismissing as uninformed meddling. This approach risks alienating not just Trump and Vance, but also Musk, one of Trump's closest allies and a figure with significant economic leverage over the UK. The economic dimension cannot be overlooked. With Tesla's future UK investments potentially hanging in the balance, Starmer's dismissive approach carries real-world consequences beyond mere political posturing. As one of the world's most valuable companies reconsiders its commitment to Britain, the cost of ignoring these criticisms becomes increasingly tangible. What Starmer hoped would remain contained within Britain's borders has exploded onto the world stage, creating a genuine diplomatic crisis. The unified criticism from Musk, Trump, and Vance has transformed a domestic policy debate into an international incident with far-reaching implications for trade deals, business investments, and the special relationship that has defined UK-US relations for generations. What's happening in Britain right now isn't just a political disagreement. It's a clash of fundamental values with far-reaching implications. The battle lines couldn't be clearer. Starmer's government, treating legitimate free speech concerns as unwelcome foreign meddling, while Musk, Trump, and Vance sound the alarm that core Western principles are eroding in one of democracy's birthplaces. Recent polling shows British citizens themselves are increasingly worried about their free speech rights, even as many express support for the current restrictions. This growing public concern creates a complicated backdrop for UK-US relations moving forward, as shifting public sentiment may ultimately force policy reconsideration. The economic stakes couldn't be higher. Britain can ill afford to alienate its most powerful ally and potential investors during these uncertain times. But beyond economics and diplomacy lies something even more fundamental: the question of British identity itself. As the world watches this unfold, we're left wondering, in a country where silent thoughts can be criminalized, which cherished freedom will be sacrificed next on the altar of progressive orthodoxy?